Moses Moody all of a sudden has found himself with this opportunity, starting the last few games and cracking the rotation by default, right? With Wiggins gone, Pajemski sitting out, and he sees that opportunity, right? He's had 11 and 4, 17 and 5, and 8 and 4 to go along with physicality and a motor and stuff that the stat sheets don't really track, right? He's had a presence on the floor, and I've had a couple of people reach out to me and they're like, yo, could he just slide into Wiggins' spot long term? Is this sustainable? And what is his ceiling now that we're seeing him in year 3? First, the Wiggins thing, I addressed it on my live stream Sunday on Patreon. What I'll say about that is, look, he can be as private as he wants, but he's not also going to get my empathy. It's an either or thing for me. You want to be private, that's fine, but I'm not gonna be, oh, poor, that's how I feel. I'm not saying that's how you should feel. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. That's how I feel about the situation. Keep it private, fine. I don't have a ton of empathy though. I need to understand a little bit what's going on to have some compassion. That's just me though. But this video is not about Andrew Wiggins. It's about Moses Moody, right? So here we are in March already. It's no longer hoodie season. We're going to have to take the hoodies off. We're going to have to get in better shape. I know. And that is where Factor can help all of you. It's fresh, never frozen food delivered directly to your doorstep, and it's all dietitian approved. I have started to lean back into the keto meals that they provide. I find that that is not only a quick way to kind of lose some of the extra water weight, but I find that I have less cravings the less carbs that I have on a daily basis. But they have something for everybody. You want Smart Cow, again, the Keto Gourmet Plus, if you want to do it big, 2 minutes and you're ready to go. It's very sustainable and it allows you to stick to the habit you're trying to create because it's so easy. And then what I can't stress enough is that it's fresh, never frozen. And particularly when it comes to proteins and meats, when it's frozen, it dries out so quickly. And so you have this high quality product that's never frozen and it tastes like it's been prepared for you and it's super quick to get. And so you don't have to commit to some long-term thing. Let me help you out. Head to factor75.com or click the link in the description and use the code alchemy50 for 50% off your first box at Factor. I think the unique thing about Moses, when you look at who he is and his career thus far, was as a lottery pick. Usually these guys come into the league and they've been the man their entire career, high school, college, right? They were the top dog, and now they may have to adjust into some sort of role on an NBA team. But Moses had a little bit of a different journey at Mount Varde, which is a factory down in Florida for basketball. He played with Cade Cunningham and Scotty Barnes. Can you imagine that team walking into your high school gym? what does that look like? But he was the third guy to those two, right? And so I think early on he learned how to play a role, and he didn't need to have the ball and all that. And I think that that's helped him up to this point as well, right? Now at Arkansas, he was the guy, and it wasn't ball dominant, but he, as a freshman there, was the go get a bucket for us guy. And he showed some of that in his game, and that's probably part of what catapulted him into ultimately being a lottery pick. Now, I've heard a lot of people say, well, how come Pajemski gets so many minutes and Moody hasn't got that? You're right. There's been, timing is everything. Stylistically, different things happen, right? But what I'd point to Pajemski is he was never the bigger, better athlete on the floor, right? I'm sure there was some times in high school where, it was a lesser team, but generally speaking, Pajemski has his entire career has had to figure out how to be, quote, crafty, right? And his game has not been developed on being the bigger, better athlete. And so I think it was less of an adjustment for him stepping into the NBA, right? And it to be fair, he's still adjusting as well, right? I remember in summer league specifically struggling where it's like, where can I get my shot? How can I get my shot off? These guys are longer and more athletic than ever, right? So there's an adjustment for all rookies, right? But I think that there's a bigger gap for some of these guys. And Moses, I think there were a lot of times before he got to the NBA where he was one of the bigger, better athletes on the floor. And so when he came into the league, it was a bigger adjustment. Like, oh, I can't just have my way physically. Do you remember the first time you realized James Wiseman had bad hands? It was like, oh, uh-oh, right? And I remember myself, I tried to write it off for a while. I was like, oh, the passes aren't great. It's his timing, right? He's nervous, right? You can write stuff off really in a rookie season. But I think we all saw it. We're like, oh, he's not really catching the ball well, right? And I think with Moody, one of the uh-oh moments early on was he couldn't stay in front of guys, guards in particular, his lateral quickness. And it was like, uh-oh, he's having a hard time staying in front of guys. And he was taking a false step. If you go back into my catalog, I had brought it up. I was like, Moody's taking a false step, meaning if he's got to slide this way, the defender is going this way, right? He'll take a step this way to go that way, right? It's kind of the same thing that you see these guys stepping out of bounds along the corners, right? They take a false step to go forward. And it's a sign, again, that he was a bigger, better athlete in high school and even in college because he was able to get away with it with his length and his athleticism. He was like, I could take a step the wrong way and I'll still recover on you. Not in the NBA. And I think ultimately in the first two seasons, that was the thing that was keeping him off the floor. His inability to stay in front of guys. And then it's tough when you're a young guy because then it's also KYP, know your personnel. And these are things, yes, you can read the scouting report as you should. I don't think as many guys do as you would imagine when I'm watching these games. But there's also just the experience of guarding a guy several times, right? And you're like, okay, I kind of have a feel for his rhythm and his tendencies. So you don't have that when you're a young player, right? And then he's taking the false step. So he wasn't doing himself any favors. But now, not only is the false step gone, he has some KYP, right? He has some familiarity with these guys around the league. He knows his personnel. And so, that disadvantage is completely gone. And now he may have an advantage if he's one of these guys that actually pays attention to tendencies in the scouting report. And that was such a big part of Andre. When you think of Andre and his defense, don't get it twisted. He had elite physical traits with the wingspan, the hand speed, right? He had it all. But as he got older, you saw him using his mind and understanding the habits and traits of these guys. And Moody seems of that ilk, like he is going to be a student of the game. So he's gotten rid of that false step, which helps him move laterally. But then the distance management that we talked about just last week, right? He can give these guys more of a cushion, which allows him to even take a false step or, deal with these twitchy guards on the perimeter, and it allows him to use that 7-foot wingspan, right? So those are the two things that I see defensively that have gotten him a lot better, along with the anticipation. You're seeing him jump passing lanes, and then most of all, want. Some of these young guys out there, they have no want to defend, and Moody, just through who he is and how he's wired, and I think where he's played, he has a want to defend. Now, offensively, you talk about adjusting to the NBA. One sign you could see with Moody was he was trying to dunk everything. And that's very common with a lot of these young guys that come into the league. Kuminga, you could say the same thing. Wiseman as well, right? He was trying to dunk everything. And it was kind of a running joke on my Patreon, like, Moody, you ain't got no hops, dog. You ain't got no hop. Like, why are you trying to dunk that, right? And don't get it twisted. He can finish above the rim. We've all seen that, right? And it's much more of a elongating and a stretching and using his length. I wouldn't call him a high flyer, right? I wouldn't call him that. Like, he's certainly not JK out there. But he has to pick his spots. And that's something that you've seen him adjust now here in year 3. There was a play in Toronto where he went coast to coast, and there were two Raptors closing in on him as he went down the middle of the floor, and he just kind of Euro finished. He just scooped and reached out to the rim and didn't elevate. There's a time and place to elevate in the league. If you're Kuminga, right, or you're one of these nuclear athletes, Jalen Green, then yeah, you can probably try to elevate on everybody, but that's for a small percentage in the league. For the rest of these guys, you got to pick your spots, and you got to learn how to quick shot and finish without elevating. And I've seen Moody start to do that. And then he and JK are really the only guys on the team that get downhill and intentionally jump into the defender's body. Right now, you'll see Draymond do it here and there. He'll pick his spots, especially when he's frustrated and he wants a whistle. But J.K. and Moody consistently are like, no, I'm getting into your body. I'm getting the whistle. I also think that he has shown that he is a tough shot maker. He's got a high release. He likes to get into the defender's body, right? And big 10-inch hands allow him to, you see him finish some circus shots, right? And shots where you're like, oh, that was tough. Like, I didn't think he was going to make that, right? And I think that's an underrated aspect when it comes to shot making is hand size. You'd think of Kawhi and all the difficult, weird shots he makes in the paint, right? Because he just has such control of the basketball. And Moody, while he's no one's Kawhi, right? But he's got full control of the ball, and so he can take contact and still finish with touch. And so while I think ideally he's a second side attacker, right? There's an action, the ball gets swung to the weak side, and he can attack a closeout or he can attack from the second side of the court offensively. But I do think he has some go get us a bucket potential. I think he's shown that, he's flashed that, and he can continue to build on that with more opportunity, right? So who is a comp for Moses Moody? What is his ceiling? I see some Chris Middleton in Moody in his offensive game in particular. Now, Middleton's a little taller. He's 6'7", right? But Moody at 21 is so strong. I think he's going to be stronger than Middleton in his prime, which could make up maybe for that little bit of height. But I think I see the similarities in not a twitchy guy, not a guy with a quick first step that's going to create a bunch of space and separation, but neither of them need a big window to feel comfortable getting their shot off. Both physical guys willing to get into the defender's body, and then a high release with big hands allows you to take contact and still finish with touch and be soft. Tough shot makers. Now, I don't know if he'll ever be the ISO scorer that Chris Middleton has become, right? But I think that he can make up for that with his willingness to move and cut off the ball. Not a staple of the Bucks offense, right? But something that Moody is willing to do and has learned playing in Golden State. So I see a lot of Chris Middleton similarities when we're talking ceiling here for Moses Moody. That's the comp that I'd throw out right now. And I think I had that even in my pre-draft prospect breakdown of him. So I'm sticking with that one, which I think is a good thing, right? That's the same comp that I had 3 years ago. He's on the right path, even if it's taken longer than we thought for him to get his opportunities. But beyond his physical traits and his skills, I think the most exciting and intriguing thing about his potential, right, and his ceiling is his character and his mentality. Now, you guys heard the quote out of the Anthony Slater article, what was it, last week? Let me read it for you if you haven't, right? But they were asking him about his playing time and dealing with, the inconsistencies of that. And he said, quote, "All my friends are in that space where they're leaving college, trying to figure out life. Everybody's going through different adversities. Who am I to think I should have an easy road to whatever I want?" Right. And you hear he's so wise beyond his age from all the other guys, and you can see it, right? And then the quote, stuff like that, right? And so that just makes you feel good about his trajectory moving forward, right? But when I was looking for this quote to write down, I stumbled across another one. This one was his rookie year on making it to the NBA and what it's like, right? Here we go. Quote, "Honestly, I would say it's not as different as I anticipated it to be. Whenever you get something that you want, when you finally get it, you want something else. Like all I ever wanted was to make it to the NBA. Now that I'm here, I want to be an all-star. If you give a pig a pancake, then he wants some syrup." That's a little Southern twang on the end of that line, right? But you just see his mindset, right? And it almost makes you wonder if Kerr gave him this treatment knowing like he could deal with it, right? That like subconsciously that was a part of it. Like, and we ain't worried about Moody. Moody gonna be fine, right? And it almost neglected him. It wasn't fair to him, but they knew he could take it. But yeah, you combine him working, putting his head down and figuring out his deficiencies and adjusting to the league with some really good physical traits at the wing position and a skill set, right? He's a shooter. He is a shooter. You're not going to have to worry about his shooting, and that's first and foremost, really, when you're talking about wings in today's NBA. But then you combine it with who he is, his character, and yeah, man, I think we can all be excited about Moody's future, his opportunities he's getting. And listen, I think we all hope Wiggins is all right and that he can return shortly. But to answer that question, yes, I do think Moody could step into Wiggins' spot and not look back. If that's what the future holds, I think it's very much sustainable. And it's funny how things work out, right? And how opportunities happen. You look at the David Lee, Draymond Green situation all those years ago. And sometimes that's what happens. You find the opportunity in others' misfortune. You guys let me know in the comments who your comp is to him or what his ceiling is to y'all. It may not have been the course that we expected, but you sit here today looking at year 3, and I would say he's right on track to living up to that potential of being the lottery pick he was. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.